Jim, I don't
Remind
see
everyone
the agenda in
to,
front of me.
can we turn off our mics so that we got a little background noise going on here?
I don't seem to have an agenda in front of me, Jim. I can't find it.
Well, the first item is approval of the February 2021 minutes.
Hang on.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
A second on that?
For what?
I'll second
Thanks,
to
Dan.
approve.
A second on the motion?
I'll second to approve the minutes.
Jim, would you do a roll call, please?
Lori Norman,
Yes.
Steve Webster,
Yes.
Joe Gray,
Yes,
John Jennings,
Abstain because you wouldn't let me in the last meeting.
still bitter about that, aren't you, John?
Yes, I am.
Sam Surprise,
Yes.
Holly Hancock,
Yes.
Tom Tyler,
Yes.
Sue Atonis.
Yes.
Show the vote unanimous with Jennings abstaining.
Okay, I have now found my agenda. So we're moving on to the financial report of February and March. You are muted, Melanie.
Good stuff, because I had just asked, can everybody hear me? So you guys should be able to hear me now. If you'll turn 9 pages into the packet that you guys received, you'll be on the February financials. And for the month of February, we had 3 events. It was a Teamsters meeting that generated about $240 worth of revenue in 2 disc golf events. This is when we started our disc golf journey. It was an interesting ride. They generated first 2 days, they generated about $4,300 worth of revenue. And then the last group that was going in the building hit a sprinkler head, so we couldn't hold the 3rd day because we were cleaning up water. And so the other income for the rest of the month of February, we had a little over $11,000 worth of sponsorship revenue, $2,500 in PSLs. And then other revenue, we generated about $35, which was ticket mostly from ATM fees. So for the month of February, we generated $14,000 worth of revenue. And then moving down to indirects, we had about $95,000 worth of expenses, which is still ahead on savings by about $124,000, again, primarily due to payroll. So the operating loss for February came in at $76,000. Most of that was $4,600 of event revenue being offset by the $95,000 worth of expenses for the month. Does anybody have any questions for that one? If not, we'll go on to March, which is 10 more pages into the packet, and that'll get you to the March financials. For the month of March, we had 8 events. Again, another Teamsters meeting, 6 more disc golf events. We got back on track, covered up some of the sprinkler heads, and come find out we can definitely do disc golf in the building. Some slight building damage, nothing that can't be repaired with a little bit of spackle and paint. And then lastly, another community event that we had, Jive Cycling, is the cycling studio that is a couple of blocks down from us. This is a Mike LeConte special. He dug up this event revenue for us going into pandemic, and they loved it so much here, they wanted to hold another event. And so they generated about $1,300 worth of revenue for us, equating to $7,300 for the month of March. Other income for March is going to be very similar to February, with sponsorships around $16,000, PSLs at $2,500, and then other revenue at $297. So other income right a little over $18,000 for the month of March, and then indirects for March, very similar to February, hovering right around $95,000. So our income loss for the month of March was at $68,000. So that is the month of March and a quick snapshot. If you guys want to turn to the next page, I can give you the year to date. Year to date for the month, or year to date at this point, we've hosted 24 events. Hello, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I thought it broke up. Year to date, okay. Year to date, we have hosted 24 events at this point in time, and our net operating loss is at $581,000. So the rolling forecast right now, we're at 24 events, and we've got to get to roughly around 30 events. So that's going to be achieved by the graduations that we've got at the end of June. And our net operating income loss at that point in time is roughly going to be around $760,000 for the operating year. Do you guys have any questions about that?
Any questions from anyone? Apparently there are no questions.
Okay.
So we would entertain a motion to approve the financial reports.
I would make a motion to approve the financial reports.
A second on that motion.
I'll second.
Financial reports are read. Move to accept. Roll call, please, Jim.
John Jennings,
Yes.
Lori Norman,
Yes.
Steve Webster,
Yes.
Joe Gray,
Yes.
Sam Spries,
Yes.
Holly Hancock,
Yes.
Tom Tyler,
Yes.
Sue Vitonis.
Yes.
Show the vote unanimous.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the event report.
Yep. If you guys want to turn to the event reports are really going to highlight most of the information that we have already read through. They're just going to show the event in more granular detail as far as what the expenses reflect, but it's going to show the same net operating income. First disc off that we had 338 paid tickets that generated $3,380 worth of gross revenue. We also did have a naming rights sponsor for this. Lone Pine had the title on it, so we flung some beer for all of the disc golfers in-house. Their title sponsor was $3,000 for this. So first round of disc golf that we hosted, again, the net operating income was at $4,380. Teamsters meeting is going to be, there were no expenses on that. All of our staffing, full-time staffers have continued to work those. So we don't have any overhead with those. So we're just charging them for the space. We usually charge them about $10 a head for the people that are coming in there. So on the financials for the Teamsters, you're just going to see the $240 of rent that we charged them. And then moving to the month of March, you're going to see 3 columns that will show the 3 disc golf tournaments that we hosted. Similar to the first one, the paid tickets for the first round was at 404 people, generating gross ticket revenue of $4,400, and then the event operating income at $2,800. Very similar, the next 2. The third round of disc golf, you're going to see we had 196 people participate with gross ticket revenue at $2,360, and then event operating income at $1,064. The fourth round of disc golf, we saw an increase in ticket sales. 294 people participated, generating gross ticket revenue of $3,530. And then event operating income of $1,760. Jive Cycling, they paid a flat rent of $1,500 to utilize the bowl. We did have some some expenses on there. We did need some help with a couple of part-timers, which was about $105. And then their event operating income ended again at $1,395. And then our last meeting was going to be with the Teamsters. they again, there are no expenses on this one. So they just paid $10 a head and they had 37 people, which is how we got to $370 worth of event income for them. And that's all with the events reports.
Okay, any questions of anyone about the events report? Someone make a motion to approve or not?
I would make
So
a
moved.
motion to approve the events report.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve. Roll call, please, Jim.
Suetonis. Tom Tyler,
Yes.
Holly Hancock,
Yes.
Sam Spries,
Yes.
Lori Norman,
Yes.
Steve Webster,
Yes.
Joe Gray,
Yes.
John Jameson. I see his lips move. You're good, John. John Jennings.
Sorry.
Yes.
Show the vote unanimous.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the manager's report.
Yeah, going into the manager's report, the past 30 days, again, we had 8 disc golf events, a Prodigy disc golf tournament, and then Jive Cycling had their 3-year anniversary party, along with the Teamsters meeting. In the upcoming 60 days, we're going to get into our graduation season. NECA is going to graduate their students over here for the first time. When they saw the RGB lighting, so all of the rainbow lighting that we could offer, they jumped at that. So I think it'll be probably the first graduation that we have hosted that is a bit more festive. So I'm interested to see how they approach their graduations with an artistic perspective that includes our RGB lighting. Army weapons training. This is a Mike LeConte special. We had some local all law enforcement as well as local Army reach out to ask if they could do some training in the building. That's going to include a litany of things, bomb dog training. Mike, you can probably go into this. All of the sneaky squirrel stuff that the Army is known for, they're going to be doing around the building. And I know that I've talked to Jim about this, but my approach on anybody doing that kind of training in the building, whether it's local EMTs, fire department, that's something that unless there's an outstanding cost for us, I generally allow them to come into the building if we're DART to do that at no cost. It only makes sense for us to allow them to do that because they become more familiar with our building. The more familiar they are in case we have an emergency, it's easier for them to navigate in the building. It's safer for them to navigate in the building. And so it's just a great relationship that, that I've kind of experienced at all of my other buildings. And I think it's something great for us to do for them. So the stronger that our relationship and ties are with the local community like that, particularly those entities, it just makes sense for us. So I know Mike's pretty excited about that, to see all of their sneaky squirrel stuff that they practice on. And then the rest of the graduations, we'll have Gray New Gloucester come in here. Westbrook is a new one for us. They reached out. They are going to try and do a graduation here. Massabesic, Bonnie Eagle, Scarborough, and Wyndham. And then events being pursued, comedy in 2022. Cornhole tournament, and then family show in December of 21. And then the rest of the team notes, right now we're interviewing for an operations director and F&B director. So those are posted online. And then additional stuff that we've got going on in the building is really kind of gearing up to allow the public back into the building, replacing all of the air filters. So we did upgrade the air filters in the building. There's different MERV ratings that they're called. And so we purchased all new filters that have increased rating to be able to catch a smaller particulate that's specific to COVID. And then working on concessions CNV, a heater replacement, and then really the rest of it is minor repairs that are product of disc golf. But other than that, that's all we've got for our manager's report.
Is Massabesic a regular there for graduation?
They are.
Really? I'm surprised they want to travel that far to graduation.
We put on
Anybody-
we put on a good experience, Tom. Come on.
Oh, I know.
I'm just kidding.
Has anyone have any questions on the report?
Just one little one here. Sneaky squirrel. Can you explain that? I've never heard that term before. You keep coming up with new ones.
I know. So sneaky squirrel is how I have described law enforcement and military training, that some of the tactics that they use as far as sniper training, or when they have, a lot of times what they'll do is if they, mass shootings, a lot of times they're going into a building that's unfamiliar. If they're looking for one specific person. So they practice that training in here. But it's not something that, they publicize all of their tactics as far as the approaches that they use, the method of thinking. So I just kind of came up with Sneaky Squirrel as to kind of encapsulate all of that, what they do.
Cool. Another
Yeah.
phrase of yours for me to
You can
to
put that in your
snag.
pocket. You can own
Okay,
that one.
thank you.
Melanie, do any of the graduations pose any problems because of all of the COVID restrictions?
At this point, no. And the reason for that is before, once the governor released her indoor capacities, her new indoor capacities, which was initially 50% of our capacity, socially distanced. And a lot of people were forgetting that small fine print, but was pretty important. Before I talked to any of the high schools, we sat down and came up with an overall game plan that they were all going to have to participate. If they were going to participate, they were all going to have to use the same stage, the same socially distanced seating. All of the events were going to have to be ticketed. So the way that the seating is going to work within the arena, it's going to be in pods of 4. So we will have to mark off all of the seating of where people can and cannot sit. And if they have, it'll be like a regular ticketed event, which is a little bit different for graduations. A lot of times it's first come, first serve. So we came up with our kind of graduation protocol that we presented to them initially to say, look, if you are wanting to participate, this is the only way that you can do it this year. I know we a lot of times allow for a lot of flexibility for them to kind of make it their own. But since this year was a little bit unique, we gave them very strict guidelines that they could choose to participate and work within, or if they wanted to do it remote, which the colleges did, they could certainly do it that way. But everybody has the understanding that if they're going to do it, safety has got to take over more of the tradition. Safety is going to be ranked above tradition in this scenario. So they've all been really willing to comply and have had no problems with it.
Thank you.
Is the government announced, the state announced, or you through your conversations, that they're going to loosen up more restrictions midsummer, or is this?
I think that probably what we're going to see is we're going to continue to abide by this initial timeline that she has given us. I think it's May 24th or 26th that we can go to 75% of our socially distanced capacity. But for graduations, they know that we're staying at the 50% capacity, which is around 1,800 people in the building. And then I think that as vaccines continue to roll out, she's going to continue monitoring how we as a local community are reopening. Are there any spikes? And then I think the big test will be, outdoors gets to go to 100% capacity this summer. So, I think barring any crazy spikes that we see, I think that we're headed in a really good direction to be somewhat back to normal by the fall. The new norm could be different than what we used to know. But all of the conversations that I've had, with promoters and other buildings are, hey, this is moving in a really good direction.
If we move to 75%, but still have to social distance, that'll still limit the capacity dramatically, won't it?
It will, yes. So if that limitation is still in play, in the fall, then that means that certain events will either have to be rescheduled or they will have to go on sale with the socially distanced capacity. And then the question becomes, with that limited capacity, can you still host the show and generate enough revenue to offset your expenses? So it's kind of a balancing act. But at this point, we'll take what we can get. The shows that have approached me recently, some of them are saying, hey, we would normally go on sale right now, but we're going to continue to hold off to see if we can just sell tickets like we normally would instead of having to do it at a socially distanced capacity.
Any further questions?
Yeah, Melanie, do you have, are you getting any interest out of concerts for the fall or into winter?
I am. Sam, you're taking away some of my thunder from my operating budget.
sorry.
Yes, no, I'm definitely seeing some changes in even the amount of emails that I'm getting as far as promoter traffic, them wanting to request avails and holds. So it's kind of like the light bulb is flickering. You can definitely tell the industry is starting to try and move forward. But they're trying to do it where they're being smart and safe about it, but trying to get the big machine to move forward, if that makes sense.
I noticed that.
You had a question, Sue?
I noticed that Stone Mountain has just put on their first announcement for a concert in the building, which is in end of September for Peter Wolf. So
Yeah.
and it's got all the quotations, which is if we can do it.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, Melanie, do you have enough staff, for graduations?
We do right now. And so the way that we're going to approach that, you've got to remember that the union would build the stage. What we're going to do as far as operations, we're probably going to bring 2 of our operations guys back on almost as contractors to help us flip over the building. And then the full-time staff are going to team up with the part-time staff to be able to basically process the people in, still using the same security measures that we normally would. F&B, we're not going to open up any of the concession stands, which historically we were never selling a lot of food. It was primarily just selling bottles of water. So we can definitely do it. It's just going to be a stripped down version of what we would have normally done. But at this point, the full-time staff, everybody has contributed to scrubbing toilets around here, being the operations crew. It's the fine print in our job descriptions of other duties as assigned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Could we have a motion to accept the manager's report?
I move to accept the manager's report.
A second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the manager's report. Roll call, please, Jim.
Sue Atonis,
Yes.
Tom Tyler,
Yes.
Sam Surprise,
Yes.
Holly Hancock,
Yes.
Lori Norman,
Yes.
Steve Webster,
Yes.
Joe Gray,
Yes.
John Jameson. Says yes. John Jennings.
Yes.
Show the vote unanimous.
Thank you. Now we go to the big ticket item of the day, budgets. Melanie, I assume you're up again.
I am. Let me share my screen. I'm holding my breath. Let's see. Travis, when I click on share screen, it says host disabled participant sharing screen. Can I please share my screen? There we go. Okay. Let's see. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So you guys, I'm sure, are familiar seeing this page. Just to give everybody's pandemic brain a jog of where we're at. This is the snapshot. This is the income statement that is going to give us the 30,000 foot view of, actually, Travis, is there a way to be able to show my mouse on this sharing of the screen?
I don't think so. If it's not popping up, then it probably won't.
Okay, that's okay, no worries. So just to be able to jog everybody's memory, this is the 30,000 foot view, the income statement. The way that this page is set up, if you guys remember that first column that's right there, that's the budget that we're going to talk through. That's for what we have put together for the upcoming year. The two gray columns to the right of that normally are going to be the previous year's actuals. Right now, we've got 2020 budget in there. A little house cleaning tip that I wanted to give you guys. The reason that we are not using 2019. A lot of the buildings in the company have 2019 in those columns because that's the last completed year for them. So it made most sense as far as comparing. The reason that we did not use 2019 is that there was a lot of extra items in that budget that were going to be muddying the waters for our conversation today. If you guys remember Maine Mammoth Arena football team, those numbers, their full season was in that budget. Sesame Street, Cisco Food Show, Deering graduation, those numbers were still reflected in that budget. So in addition to trying to talk through pandemic, there's some other items in there that it was just going to be extra stuff we had to sort through. Also, the 2020 budget for us, if you guys recall, there was a lot of historical data that we pulled from to be able to put that budget together, and it created a really great baseline for us moving forward. So as we're going through, the gray columns are 2020 actuals. So you can see there's 67 events right there. It's a partially completed budget. To the right of that, you're going to see the 2020 budget, what we had originally projected that year of 102 events. So when I toggle back and forth, I will make sure that I highlight for you guys whether we're talking about what actually happened in 2020 or whether or not I'm just talking about a comparison versus the budgeted number. But I wanted you guys to understand why I didn't choose 2019. But moving down this page, you guys can see on the left-hand side, there's some yellow boxes. Those are basically the number benchmarks that we're going to get through today. They used to be green, but I'm going with the yellow brick road this year. Something good has got to happen, so that's why I chose yellow. But the first yellow brick that you guys are going to look at is number of events. And to the right of that is going to be 78 events. Going to the next slide, this is going to encapsulate all of the projected events that we have for the upcoming year. A couple of assumptions that we talked through last year that are still present today when we're putting this budget together were things to be considered like socially distanced guidelines. When are those going to be lifted so that we're back to normal? When would the public be willing to participate in mass gatherings? Discretionary income spending. When is the public going to be willing to spend extra savings that they have outside of a stimulus check? And then what is our industry doing? What does it look like? So as we go through these numbers, some of them I have gone in and tweaked because of those items that I just touched on. But the first numbers that I have, the first 5 numbers that are right there are highlighted in red. And the reason that they are highlighted in red is because they are not returning this year. The reason that they are not returning is not because of anything that we have done. It is the continued ripple effect that is being felt by pandemic. So you got to remember, they're a business like anybody else, and they also felt the ripple effect of pandemic, and they still are to certain degrees. Some of them, they don't have a product to put out right now. They're still working on piecing the production together to be able to put it out on tour. Talent acquisition, a lot of them had to lay off their staff, similar to the way that we did. So they are in the process of rehiring. And then some of them are going to remote productions for the year and have just said, look, we're going to do it remote until we can really know that we're out of pandemic. So that top line WWE, they have holds for next fall for us. Right now, they're only going into markets that are fully reopened. Most of that's going to be in the Midwest. So that's why They aren't included in this budget. Sesame Street is a great example. They just don't have a product to put out right now. Banquets and meetings, I pulled that one out because I don't envision that is where most businesses, as they're trying to rebuild, are going to be putting their money. Cirque du Soleil, we had August holds for Cirque this year. Cirque is a great example. They reached out to all of the buildings that they had holds on and said, look, we're in the process of having to rebuild. We don't have a product to bring you, but we will reach out in the future to place holds and continue our business. And then Disney on Ice. Disney on Ice is a really great example of exactly what is going on in our industry right now. A month ago, their dates got challenged by another promoter. Normally, I don't allow anybody to challenge their dates because we always have an existing contract. So when I went to the promoter, I said, look, I know normally I would tell people to take a flying leap if they tried to even touch your dates. But right now we don't have a contract, and I want to check and see, are you going to have a product to bring us? And at that point in time, she said, unfortunately, no, I can't tell you that I'm going to have something. So I can't keep my dates. I'm going to release my hold, but I think it makes sense for you and I to keep in touch. That way, if I do come across being able to route something up your way, we could possibly get it later on in Q1. So 2 weeks later, after that conversation, I was contractually obligated to give you guys a copy of the budget. At that point in time, I was thinking, well, unfortunately, we don't have Disney on Ice. 2 weeks later, after that, I looped around with her and said, hey, here's our booking calendar. Here's some more dates that I've got. I've been able to clean it up because I have the Mariners schedule in hand right now. So it's not littered with a ton of holds. These are the 3 weeks that I think that we could get your entire show in. And she said, your ears must have been burning. You are on my call list this week. I'm going to take one of those weeks. And so I was really excited to hear that. And my next question to her was, can you tell me the number of shows that we're going to be able to play so I can put it back in the budget? And she said, unfortunately, at this time, I can't tell you that because are we going to have to sell tickets socially distanced? If so, we are going to have to increase the number of shows that we have to be able to generate enough revenue to offset the expenses. And she said, so I can't tell you right now, it's too early. What I can tell you is I am now including you in part of the routing for Disney, but right now we just need more time to see how the local governments are going to unfold for you guys. And then we can really kind of hone in on exactly what it's going to look like. And so Sam, this kind of goes back to your question of what's happening in the industry. And this is just the perfect example of it, because even in a couple of weeks, the conversation has just looked completely different. And that's just with one promoter. And so as I've been putting the budget together, the kind of thought that I keep having in my head is kind of that of a train, like the engine's on and it's trying to get all of the weight moving in the same direction. And I'm hearing the clinking of the cars and there's just a small amount of movement that's happening. So right now, I'm pretty sure when I sent the budget over to Mike and Alex, I was waiting for the trembles of knowing one of their heads was going to explode. But this budget is a great snapshot of what's happening in our industry on April 21st. You've got to remember it's almost a pandemic budget. It's going to be fluid. The more months that we have, if we can get closer to June, I can possibly put more events into this to lessen the blow at the bottom. So that's really a huge snapshot of what's happening right now. We're trying to get moving in the same direction, but it's just taking more time. And as we talk with sponsorships later on too, the same thing is holding true. But I'll stop right there because I know that was kind of a lot of information touching on a lot of things. Do you guys have any questions?
What a task these promoters have trying to put a schedule together for concerts, for events where you've got huge road crews and stuff like that. It's just and you're trying to book tentatively booked states that maybe aren't going to be open. And so you can't
Correct.
book them. I mean, when it does fly, it's going to be just a shitstorm, wild booking all at once, a flurry.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest about it, it'll be a phenomenal problem to have.
Yeah.
And in the conversations that I've had with other promoters, with other buildings, just in the past month and a half alone, there has been a huge uptick just in the emails, the communication of, hey, what does your booking calendar look like? If you had asked me 3 months ago, it was crickets. And so as the vaccines have continued to kind of hit their stride and roll out, I think we will continue seeing an increase in the communication and people trying to basically click the business back online. But for now, it's still, some of this is still preemptive, right? We're going to continue to build. So can I tell you where we're going to be by June? No. Do I think it's going to look better? Yes. Can I tell you how much better? Not right now.
Is there any rumblings at all or any conversation about whether you're going to check people that they've had at the door, whether they've had the vaccine or not? Is there anything?
There have been different conversations about it at this point. I know that right now corporate is not going to ask that. I think if it's going to come from anybody, I think it will be something that gets broached by some pretty large promoters, but I think that that's a really hard thing to navigate. So it'll be interesting to see it unfold, but at this point, I have not been told, hey, we've got to mandate this.
Yeah, okay.
Hey,
Great.
one question I have on this is that minor concerts number seems up a little bit. Is that based on you're starting to get a lot of stuff? And by the way, my video camera is all messed up. That's why I keep cutting out. Sorry.
No worries. So the minor concerts, so I would say look at the concerts as a whole, those 3 lines, the major, the minor, and Live Nation. If you look over to the 4th column, budget number of events, right now I'm budgeting for 7. The 7 events that are in there right now are either events that have been rescheduled, or I've got a verbal commitment from the promoter saying, yes, barring anything crazy, we are coming. And so that was why I was willing to put 7 in there. It wasn't 7 that I was hoping to get. It is 7 that are still there. But as far as the minor concerts go, remember that column, if you look at the minor concerts, that 161, it has a P next to it. That was projected. So that number, part of that number did not take place in 2020 because those events were slated for later in the spring.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. In a couple of more, I'll go through the rest of this page. I don't want you guys to think that I'm expecting you to read through all of these numbers. One thing I want to toggle back, if you guys remember the 3 green lines that you guys are looking at right now, the gross ticket revenue, the surcharge facility fee, and the ticketing convenience fee, all of those numbers are going to be attached to the number of tickets that we can sell. If we have less events, that number is naturally going to decrease because it's less tickets that we can sell due to less events. However, it would be low-hanging fruit of me to say that's the only reason that it decreased. Hockey, if you guys look at the hockey number right there, the budgeted number is 214 versus what actually happened in 2020, which was 263. So going into this budget, I knew that for most of the fall events, I had concerns that we talked to previously, discretionary income, were people going to be willing to go out? Some of these numbers I tweaked the total paid tickets. Hockey, I know, is a huge portion of our budget. So the way that I thought through that was to kind of do a comparative analysis. So we'll do Mariners hockey history. Year 1, the 18-19 season, they sold 85,000 tickets. Year 2, we got to play 33 games of a 36-game schedule. At that point in time, at 33 or at 32 games, we had sold 69,000 tickets, and we were averaging 2,100 tickets a game. So to be able to get or estimate what a completed season would have looked like, I averaged out the last 3 games. So had we played them, I think that we would have gotten to 75,000 tickets sold. So between year 1 and year 2, we went from 85 to 75,000 tickets, and we saw an 11% decrease. Year 3, we did not play, and year 4, we're going into year 4 right now. So what I did, the reason that number has decreased, I reduced the total paid tickets for the first half of the season by 5.5% out of concern for all of the reasons that we've kind of talked through. So that's why you're seeing a dip in gross ticket sales and the surcharge and the convenience fees. College hockey, I did the same thing. Those guys they're holding a date right now in November. I do not have a contract with them, and I'm not guaranteed who the opponent is going to be. Obviously, who they play will dictate what kind of ticket sales that we have. So right now, that's at 38,000 tickets. That one can potentially increase depending on their opponent. There's rumblings that it's going to be UMass, which would be a great draw, but it's not guaranteed right now. And then PBR is at $34,000. At this point, I don't know if I'm going to have to socially distance those ticket sales or those tickets that are sold. So that could impact the net revenue number right there. So looking at those two green lines, that's why you would see a decrease in those. There are some additional tweaks that I made right there. And then moving on down to the rest of the events, sports between high school and Marshwood, high school basketball tournament in Marshwood, that's collectively $89,000 worth of net ticketing revenue. Family events, the next 4 gray lines, Paw Patrol, ice racing, monster trucks, and Globetrotters. Collectively, that's $91,000 worth of net revenue. Most of those I did not tweak. Monster trucks is seeing a decline because that was naturally declining in their overall ticket sales over the past couple of years. Globetrotters slightly declined because they've got a Thursday night play at this point in time. The concerts we already talked through. Those numbers are based off of what I think or what we have at this point been guaranteed is going to come back, not what we're projecting. And then religious is going to be Jehovah's graduations. Those are the 8 graduations that we historically have at $52,000. And then conventions took a little bit of a hit because Maine Restaurant Association is not going to return this year. Which actually they should have been a red line at the top. They are going to do their event remotely this year, but they do have holds for the following year. And then community and other miscellaneous are usually events that we pick off throughout the year. And I've had conversations with other events I think are going to fit into those line items. So that kind of walks you through our event budget at the moment and how it's impacting those 3 green lines that you're seeing right there. Additionally, if you go to the 2 purple lines, the net rent income and the net service income loss, keep in mind that your net rent income, that's the event mix. We've talked about that before of what does the deal structures look like with the events that we're currently bringing in. And this is another reason why I chose to reflect this against the 2020 budget. Our net rent income right now is at $468,000. If you look to the 4th column over, we were budgeting to be at $497,000. So there's only a $29,000 difference, which is not a huge difference when you're talking about reducing our event load by 24 events. And that's because our deal structures are still that of a rent plus expenses deal, as opposed to being a co-pro deal. Net service income below it, that's going to be the number, that's going to be the amount of expenses. So that number is not going to dip down as dramatically as we had hoped because our expenses aren't getting cheaper. Stagehands are going to increase by 2%. We've got a minimum wage increase coming up that's going from $12 to $13. That's roughly an 8% increase. So that gets us to our direct event income of $135,000. And then moving down to suite revenue, suite is going to be the number of suites that we can sell during the event. And right now we're at $10,000. I think that can potentially increase if our event load increase. And that gets us to total revenue of $305,000. Do you guys have any questions about that portion of it? If not, I'll keep going along. Ancillaries are next. Ancillaries are going to be concessions driven. And just to throw this up real quick, this one's more for Lori. I know you guys have seen this in the past, but Lori, just so you kind of have an idea as to how we get to our estimated concessions number. Normally what we do is for each event that we have, I look at the historicals. So I look at what is our average concessions growth been, and I look at the ebb and flows as to what has happened with that each individual event, which translates to the right into our per cap. So as a staff with F&B manager, finance, we will talk about, hey, do we think we're being aggressive enough as far as how much F&B we can sell at one event? Have we overshot our mark? And so we can kind of talk through exactly what has happened. College hockey is a great example. As you can see, when we play different teams, that will often impact the number of people in the building, and how much F&B we can collectively sell. So I wanted to throw that out because that's really kind of the roadmap as to how we get to our concessions numbers. So right now, concessions is at $390,000. Novelty income has slightly decreased in comparison to what we actually did in 2020, which was $34,000. The reason that I have decreased it slightly is because there were some events that played off right before pandemic happened that were very strong in merch sales. Mercy Me is a Christian concert that comes in, and their merch sales are always does gangbusters. It does amazingly, which is great, but that's not in our event load this year at this point. So it doesn't make sense to stay within that projection as far as merch goes. And then that gets us down to our event operating income, the second brick of $860,000. Do you guys have any questions on that? If
Melanie,
not, yeah.
I know at one time you had talked about off-site events, outdoor events. Any of that ever come to fruition, or any?
No. Not at this point. There were a couple shows that I had reached out to. One was, I think it was called Jurassic Adventure, which was basically, it's almost like a drive-through museum. They put up real life dinosaur displays, and it's a self-paced thing that you stay in your car and drive through. So that was really the one that I had in the back of my mind for Scarborough Downs. When I reached out to the promoter, they just weren't routing up this way. They were hitting more of the markets that were fully open, such as Texas. They stayed in Texas for a while. So that's really the only reason that that really didn't come to fruition. But I was collecting that information because as pandemic continued to unfold, there were different emails that were coming across my desk for those different types of shows. And I wanted to make sure I had the information that I needed regarding Scarborough Downs and some of the other outdoor parking lots that could have been a potential fit.
Anyone else have any questions so far? Apparently not.
All right, we'll go into other income. So other income for us is going to be advertising, naming rights, suites, club suites, and other rentals. When we went into pandemic, we went in with one strategy as far as how we were managing our sponsorship contracts. What we were doing was, and again, I think I recall my mindset with when pandemic started, we'll be out of this in maybe 4 to 5 months, 6 tops. And so our approach on sponsorship, which is laughable now that I think about that. So our approach with sponsors was, hey, we're not going to give any money back. We're not going to cancel any contracts. It was just going to create too much of a problem with that many contracts. What we're going to do is continue to proceed forward as normal, knowing that the amount of time that we are dark, we are going to owe you on the back end. So in that example, if we had stayed dark for 6 months, at the end of their contract, when their contract would normally expire, we were going to fulfill our contractual obligations with them by giving them 6 months of time owed to them on the back end, if that makes sense. So as pandemic continued to unfold and the longer we stayed in this, that didn't necessarily make for the best approach, because on the back end of all of our contracts, we were going to end up owing everybody at least a year's worth of time, which meant that was a year that we were not reflecting any revenue on the financials. So what we are doing now is we are including time lost in the amortization schedule for each contract. So a really great example of this, a fictional example of this, is let's say that the venue partnered with Sam Surprise Hair Care Products. Let's say that Sam Surprise Hair Care Products had a 1-year agreement with the venue for $12,000. That would mean that the monthly payments that they made to us were $1,000 each. For ease of math, let's say we were dark for another year. That would now mean that we reflect on our books a 2-year agreement with monthly payments of $500 each. We're still making Sam Surprise whole as far as the time that we owe him, but on our books, we're not showing any dark time or any time of no payments. Kind of stuff right there. Does that make sense with everybody, what we've done with that? That was the best example I could come up, and I was really excited to share Sam Hair Care Products. And then moving on down, naming rights, $150,000 that you're seeing right there. One other thing I wanted to mention about sponsorship revenue. Normally for sponsorships, I throw up this spreadsheet for you guys, and we get to take a look at each year what the annual contract renewal rate is, the contract loss rate, and the new contract gain rate is. And so we can look over the past couple of years and see what the ebb and flow is for Zach and what his overall average is. When I got to this portion of the budget, I thought that's such an unfair thing to throw up to Zach, because it's the same, he's sitting in the same exact boat as I am as far as projecting what events we're going to have. So right now, during pandemic, the number of contracts that we have retained was 42% of our contracts. And when I say retained, I mean those contracts did not come up for renewal. They are still partners of ours. They're still rolling along. We have amortized the amount of money that they owe us. But those 42% of our contracts are still present. 58% of our contracts during pandemic in the past year came up for renewal, having nothing to do with pandemic. During a normal year, that would have been the number of contracts that we would have had to go back to renew their agreement, because the time had simply lapsed. So right now, Zach has had multiple conversations with most of our partners who are in that 58% to say, look, I think that we need to re-sign a deal when we are going to reopen and when we have a better idea of when that is going to be. There's no point in us signing a contractual agreement with me instantly owing you time and you not getting something that you're paid for. So in the next couple of months, it's very similar to the events that we have coming up. He will continue to work on those relationships, establish a date, a reopening date that they're comfortable with, for us to be able to pull those guys back into the operating budget. The number that you see right now in advertising sponsors is only the contracts that we have retained. It's that 42%. There is no extra fluff or any kind of, oh, maybe we will get this contract. So I do envision this similar to the number of events potentially increasing by the time we go to reopen. So that was another nugget that I wanted to throw in there as far as sponsors go. Naming rights is in year 8 of a 10-year agreement. Zach had already started those conversations prior to pandemic of just kind of greasing the skids a little bit about, hey, this is coming up. Cross has been a phenomenal partner of ours during pandemic. They have been very present and willing to communicate about everything that has been going on. In previous conversations, I know that we have had about their willingness to help us continue our business during pandemic. And then luxury suites, right now we have got 3 of the 6 sold. A 4th one right now is wrapped up in a package that Zach has presented a founding partner at this point in time. So that's another avenue of revenue that we will potentially get to include in the budget later on. Club seats, right now we have, those are also going, most of those are wrapped up in a lot of our sponsorship contracts, about 70% of those. So that one was naturally going to decrease, but are still present. Other rentals, $65,000, that's about $20,000 worth of ATM fees, $35,000 worth of high school hockey rentals, and a $10,000 mail-in order fee for Ticketmaster. And then that gets us to $573,000 of other income. Do you have any questions on that? If not, I'll just keep going along. Lastly, we are going to have indirect. Indirect just gives you guys a snapshot of everything that we have got going on. I really compared this. I would probably look at the first column and the 4th column on this page to have a fair comparison. And you can kind of see the variances to the right. Executive, I took out one of the conventions that I normally go to. It's a booking conference. I don't envision that happening in October. Marketing and group sales, I kept theirs in there. Theirs is a corporate event. We'll know closer to the summer as to whether or not that one's going to happen. If it's not, we can pull that revenue out because that's not something, that's not money that they're going to be spending. Finance is showing some cost, some benefit savings in there by about $23,000. And then box office, we did put a little bit of extra money in there for signage specific to COVID and safety protocols. And then operations, there's some savings in there. If you guys remember, we had expense reflecting because we were renting a forklift. So we have purchased one now. So we're going to show some savings in the operations department. Event services, that $44,000 increase is going to be due to the minimum wage increase on the part-time staff. So that's why you're seeing that increase there. Food and beverage, that one is declined some. They normally use nonprofit groups in the concession stands. So that labor would naturally be decreased because there are less events, which means less nonprofit labor coming in there. And then corporate sales, there's $500 worth of signage in there. And then overhead, there's still some continued utility savings, about $8,200 in there. And then to get into the weeds a little bit more, proposed wage adjustments for the staff, 2% cost of living increase. Incentive compensation projections is roughly around $59,000. That's assuming that we get 100% achievement. And then projected benefit cost increase is roughly around $21,000. That's a 5% increase that'll hit January 1. But that gets us indirect expenses of $2.4 million down to our net operating income loss of $997,000.
Melanie, this is Joe Gray. I just have one question. First of all, thank you. This is an excellent presentation and overview. I'm just wondering, how many full-time employees is this budget supporting?
Right now, it's with 14, and that is with them starting July 1. And that's been conversations that Jim and I have had over the past couple of weeks. I think as we get closer to summer, we will have an idea of when we need to bring certain staff back. Not everybody is going to start July 1. The only people that I'm working on bringing back right now are the operations director and the F&B manager, or the F&B director. Just because to get the building ready to reopen after it's been sitting for a year is going to be a very heavy lift. It's just going to be time consuming to go back through and clean and really prep the building. So I do think that there will be some savings in there with staggering the rest of the staff start date.
And are we going to be able to bring back staff that we had to lay off, or are we just going to have to go out in the marketplace and hire new people?
It's a mix. Some of the staff have gone and found other jobs at this point, which we knew could potentially happen. Some of the rest of the staff, they have the option of coming back if they want to. So there are positions that we are going to have to come back and find new staffing to fill. And then others, they will come back just a year older.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Melanie, in looking at this overall budget projection, and I know you took COVID very heavily factored into this, do you think this is a worst case scenario that everything else is just going to be a plus?
Now I'm going to say this knocking on wood, Tom, because as pandemic has happened, I keep saying, oh, this is worst case scenario. And I felt like it has continued to get worse. I did put this budget together with a worst case scenario in mind. Most of the time when I put a budget together, there are a lot of projections and forecasting that's in there. And I didn't think that that was appropriate at this point in time because everything is so fluid. So yes, to me, again, knock on wood, I'm scared to say it, that I do envision this being worst case scenario. So barring any other pandemic, any spikes, any having to close anything down, yes, this is worst case scenario to me.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any questions of Melanie on the proposed budget?
Tom, this is John.
Yes, John.
I just wanted to mention, I think Melanie and her team have demonstrated incredible leadership over the last year plus now. Due to the pandemic, they have adjusted as needed.
We lost you, John.
I thought it was a dramatic pause.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but I really liked where he was heading with this. So.
Yeah.
As long as there's no but or however or anything, I think we'll just leave it at that. It was perfect, right?
Right. Well, to be honest about it, I'll kind of take what John's saying. I thank you is needed for you guys and for Jim, because the support that you guys have given us to be able to navigate this has been tremendous. There have been other buildings that haven't been that fortunate. Other GMs have been kind of shocked that disc golf was even allowed in the building, but disc golf has been a great example of your willingness to kind of trust us to try something new, because it's turned into more sponsorship revenue. They have signed more agreements to be the title sponsor of that event and other events. So it's definitely been a partnership that you guys always felt supported through.
Okay, at this point, Jim, do we need a vote on this budget?
No, because unless you think this is good to go, I would recommend the trustees hear this as Melanie's proposed budget. But like many other years, we regroup maybe in late May and see if there are any updates that Melanie might have that change the numbers, and then move that budget to the commissioners for their June meeting. That's the way I would approach it.
No, I agree. And then, because hopefully as things open up and we know the late May dates are going to change with regards to attendance numbers, that more of the stuff actually jumps out at us as more and more people get vaccinated.
Excuse me, Tom. Oh,
yes.
John's back in. Okay, I just wanted to let Travis know that John's trying to get back in. Sorry, Tom.
No problem. No problem at all. That was the operations. Do we have a trustees budget?
We do have a trustees budget. It is the last page of your packet, and it is not as complex as what Melanie just went through, and I could probably go through it in about 10 seconds.
Hey, Jim, can we let John finish his thought? The poor guy, he doesn't say much and he just lost us there. I'd like to hear what he had to say.
Sure, let's go for it.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I am sorry that I am so done with Zoom. But going back to Melanie and her team, I just wanted to applaud everything that Melanie has had and her team have had to do to adjust to the pandemic. We certainly, I know Jim deals with it on the county side, I deal with it on the city side. And so I have full faith and confidence in Melanie to continue to make adjustments if necessary over the course of the next budget cycle or the upcoming budget cycle. And so I do appreciate her presentation today. I think it was very, very good and compelling. And so I'd be very supportive of that coming forward. But hats off, Melanie, and to your entire team.
Thank you, John, truly. Honestly, it couldn't be done without everybody's support in this room. So I will gladly take that tremendous compliment that you gave me, but it's definitely shared with all of the staff, the remaining staff that's here. They have continued to help do a lot of the heavy lifting and some scrubbing of toilets as well when needed. So it's really, I take that and kind of spread it across everybody who is still here. It really speaks volumes to the staff that we have here. So thank you.
Melanie, do I have to give you a cut of my new hair products company?
Well, as long as my hair is going to be as luscious and loxy as yours later on, yes.
Although I would hesitate naming a hair products company surprise, never knowing what they're going to get out.
I know, that is true.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, trustees budget, Jim.
All right, jumping into the trustees budget, as the trustees are aware, since we did the merger back in 2017, this budget has changed significantly, and on the reduction side of things. Back in 2017, we were running about a $276,000 budget. Today, I bring forward a budget that's about just over $168,000. Where we're looking to fund is in professional services. We run a $15,000 line item there. I think we could go down a little bit to $13,000. Board meetings, I've gone from $1,200 to $1,400 there. And then the management fee, which is always throwing a dart, especially in pandemic time. But there's some language in the contract that keeps some things whole around the management fees. So last year we were at 80,000. I've put it at 75,000, and I think last year we were at 80 and we paid out 78,000. So I think 75 is a good sweet number there. Jumping down to insurances, insurance always goes up. I never see it go down. So I've just clicked it up $1,000 on the package and $200 on the auto. And so that's pretty much it. 5 lines, give and take, depending upon the line, and a total trustee budget of $168,800.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anybody have any questions for Jim on that?
Tom, I raised my hand. I wanted to ask Jim for clarification on the management fee. Could you just explain that in that, is this actually the bonus that we have an obligation to provide?
Yes, if you remember, typically I say it's anywhere July, actually it's not July, it's probably September, October, we bring forth the 3-pronged bonus, or I call it the incentive fee, that really dictates, how many events did we have? What was our sales? Did they reach the goals as defined within the contract? And we work through all kinds of formulas and spit a final number that ranges anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 on a given year. Most times we find ourselves somewhere in the $75,000 to $90,000 number.
So, Jim, in light of the pandemic and in light of any of the public that may be tuning in today or will watch this at some point in the future, I'm wondering if you could explain why we would be providing a bonus in the light of the pandemic. I just think it's important that the public understand the certain contractual obligations and so forth.
Sure. That is because there is language in the contract, and I got kind of laughed last year, and that was a nervous laugh when I saw it, because there was actually pandemic language put into the contract. And I think the last time we had a pandemic was what, 1918 or something like that, 1908. But this contract has pandemic language that requires us to look back at previous year or years and base the incentive fee or a portion thereof on previous year numbers that get prorated, so that the incentive fee doesn't automatically go down to zero because of the pandemic. There is always some fee that's going to be imposed onto the county due to the contract language.
Any other questions of Jim? Hearing none. So Jim, I assume at this point we are ready to just move on and wait till the end of the month for updated numbers, end of May.
Yes, I would propose that we move on off from this. I appreciate everyone's kind words to Melanie and her staff. They've done a terrific job over there. And I think, this is a worst case budget that's only going to get better, hopefully in the next 45 days. But I'd like to send out maybe a couple of dates towards the end of May for everyone to weigh in on their availability, and let's schedule up a May meeting so that we could follow up on this budget and work through any changes that Melanie and her staff have seen. And we can tighten up the budget, hopefully, so that the trustees can make a recommendation to the commissioners who will hear this and meet on this in June, so that we have a July 1st budget.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's trying times for every arena type place and all over the country. I know Augusta's going through the same gyrations through my other organization. We're negotiating with him now, trying to figure out how we put on a show. And that's not even till next spring. It's just, it's tough. And Melanie and her group have done a fantastic job just halfway keeping us above water. So is there any other thing to be brought up today? We've gone through the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
I just also wanted to commend Jim Gailey. Jim, of course, working with Melanie. I think we have a phenomenal team there with Jim's leadership at the county. So I also just wanted to praise him as well. And the safe behind you looks like a safe that we've lost at Portland. So I thought maybe you might want to return that safe and the contents. So thank you.
John, with all your nice comments and your pending retirement not too are you looking for a county job or maybe a civic center?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Hey, John, could you commend me for something? I mean, I feel a little bit left out. Just tell me I'm doing a good job. Anything.
I'm just in that mood today where I just want everyone to feel good about themselves. So, Steve, absolutely.
I love you. I love you all. Group hug.
Yeah.
Me too, John.
I agree.
Everyone.
Jim and Melanie have done an excellent job.
Yeah.
I second that. I'm very happy that we've come a long way in the last 4 years. Think about it. And to go through what we've gone through just now, and with hope on the horizon, it's all looking good.
Agreed.
Absolutely. With all those bubbly high notes, I would accept a move for adjournment.
I would move that we adjourn.
Second.
We don't need, do we need to vote on that, Jim?
No, all those opposed, you can stay on. The rest of us will leave. And
Thank you all.
Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
thanks. Take
Thank
care.
you so much.
Bye-bye.